to viewers, the Colonel speaking to you live from the Lay Rectory for British Imperial YouTube Broadcasting, and another of the Squire Rambles on. I think we're at number 11, aren't we?
I think so, though I can't remember.
Good morning, Nigel. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thank you. And I hope our viewers are, wherever you may be, most welcome. And what would you like to talk about this time, Nigel? I should tell you that on my way up here, I realised that I could, if I stood on the roof of the Lay Rectory, I could possibly see the rooftops and chimneys of the venerable old preceptory. So next time I'll bring some field glasses and a ladder. Anyway, how did you get on last weekend?
Well, now, last weekend was one to be remembered.
Right.
I mean, I have to explain that normally I've been in these rambles, I've been talking about things that happened a long time ago, but this time an event happened last weekend. I went to a big steam and vintage show near Henley.
Ah, the Fawley Hill Rally.
Fawley Hill Rally. That was three days. We were invited. It wasn't a steam and rally in the normal sense of the word. It was more of a thing by invitation.
Yes.
I happen, as I have been for some time, to be the chairman of the Witney Model and Collectors Club.
Indeed so.
And as a club we were invited to go down and put on a display of some of our models and bits and pieces. And
you took a display of gramophones.
Yes, I did, that's right. Last Tuesday had to go down there to, well, basically or find the way, and we had to put our marquees up, because we've got two marquees we put up to house ourselves. As a club we're all self-contained. We've got a trailer, we've got tables, we've got all the bits and pieces to do a display. And we went down on the Tuesday, a team of us, and got the marquees put up. And it was very interesting because next to us where we were on the field there was a team of men putting up a circus big top.
A large one?
Oh, huge one, absolutely
right.
Enormous, yes. One with the sort of dome at the top and then came down with stars all on it, you know. It was really
fabulous.
Really, and that was a sight worth seeing, those chaps putting that up. Because the pegs they put in the ground, they had to have an automatic hammer to knock them in, and they went in the ground about 5 feet.
Goodness me.
And what basically happened was they drove up with a articulated lorry trailer, parked it in the middle of the square of ground that they were going to put it on, and then it all folded and was taken off the trailer and erected. They put a couple of gantries up to start off with, and then the whole tent went up, and then they put the side poles in, and it really was a highly skilled job. There were about 12 men working on it, and it took them mostly a day and a half to get it up. It was a huge task. And that was sort of when we were having a break watching them doing that job, that was quite an education really to watch that.
But it was.
Well, the first day of the show was on Friday, and we had to get down there fairly early because we had to get all the things set up ready for the gates to open. And Friday was quite a reasonable day. There were a lot of people obviously were working. They decided to have it over 3 days, and I managed to get round some of the exhibits. I think over the weekend they had well over 70 steam engines.
Goodness me.
And with other vehicles, like they had steam cars down there, and they also had a steam bus.
A steam bus?
A steam-driven bus, yes. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And they had that going, and so I think at the end of the day they probably nearly 80 steam exhibits down there, which is which is amazing, really.
It's incredible.
They had events going on. They had an arena with events going on all day long. They had some flying displays. Had camel racing.
Oh, I think I know a couple of people I'd like to see camel racing, don't you?
Yeah, I think I wonder whether they get the hump or not.
Well, I know people who get the hump when they're not camel racing, so what would happen there, I don't know. Fantastic. Camel racing.
Camel racing, yes.
Did you have a small wager?
Oh no, it wasn't anything like that. It was great. It was great fun.
I bet it was. I'd have rather enjoyed doing that myself, Squire.
Well, I did wonder. Anyway, they had camel racing. And I had various events going on in the arena all afternoon. Various parades of vehicles.
Wonderful.
In addition to the steam, they had probably about 150 vintage cars.
Goodness me, mine wasn't there.
Everything from fairly small ones. There was an Austin 7, a fairly sporty looking Austin 7 car.
Right.
Which will figure in the story a little later on. And then everything up to Rolls Royces, Bentleys, Jaguars.
And the other car you mentioned.
And of course the one that I would really have liked to have driven home, and that was a French Hispano Suiza.
Ooh.
And that was magnificent.
Yeah.
I didn't see that. I don't think I saw that till the last day. That came in on the Sunday, but that was amazing. That was so elegant and well thought out. So the gentleman who owns this has got enough room to have his own railway.
He's got everything. He is the collector's collector, and a magnificent effort he's made.
Oh, yes.
He really buys the very best in full working order. If it's not in working order, he gets it there.
Well, the field we were on, the ground was quite well drained.
Yes.
Which will also figure later on in the story. But anyway, I had a walk round what was there on the first day, and I walked down you walk down a hill at the end of the field, and then you come across this. It looks like a lovely country railway station. And it's a real Victorian railway station with all the bits and pieces. All
the lamps, all the fittings,
yes.
The chocolate dispensers, the enamel signs, the platform signs, everything, isn't it?
It's all there. And nearby he's got a
ticket office.
That's right, and a set of galloping horses running.
Oh, fabulous.
Which was a birthday present from his wife a few years ago.
Wonderful.
And that's a set that's been very well restored. They have it steam driven sometimes, but over the weekend they had it driven by a diesel generator.
Right.
They had the two engines they had hauling the train. One was a smallish diesel, more or less a diesel shunter type engine, and then there was an 060. I think it was a Hunslet. It was small saddle tank steam engine.
Right.
But the gradient it pulls up is one of the steepest gradients in the country. And I didn't have a ride on the first day, but I did go down to have a look at it, and it was really fantastic. So yes, the event and the circus big top tent next to us had events, had entertainments going on in there, and they had a pub in there serving drinks. They had a cafe in there. So it really was on a big scale, but a wonderful event. We had a bit of a problem coming home, because when the end of the day came, we had all the traffic basically had to go down one road, which was just about two lanes, but only just.
Yes.
And a steam engine was being taken out, and somebody was arriving in time for the next day with a huge American 6x6 army lorry.
Oh dear.
Two met head to head, and there was traffic backed there, traffic immediately behind them, and that took at least an hour to sort that out.
Goodness me.
So anyway, we got home all right, and needed a much earned night's sleep after.
And that was just the first day.
That was the first day. Second day we go down there, and the weather isn't so good, and in the afternoon the heavens opened, and there were some different engines and exhibits down there on the second day, and more of them because people were working on the Friday, so they took things in. There was a really eccentric looking American fire engine.
Wonderful.
It was called a Seagrave.
Right.
And it was 1920. It was one of those things you'd see in an early silent film, you know, something like the Keystone Cops might have had, and it was a 6-cylinder inline petrol engine.
Good Lord.
12.5 litres capacity.
Oh.
And when that was running, you felt the ground shake as it came past.
Indeed.
And it hadn't been fully restored. It was still in its original paintwork, so it was partly rusty, partly a bit under the weather. But it was really great to see it like that. It was a lovely old fire engine. And the other thing that took my eye was a tractor, a very rare American farm tractor called an Advanced Rumley.
Right.
And that had got a huge 2-cylinder engine. And it was a bit like looked like a half-sized traction engine.
Right.
With a whacking great flywheel on the side, and that's what you had to pull round to start the engine.
Good Lord.
Health and safety would have...
They'd have had a fit, wouldn't they?
But that's what people did in those days.
Grab hold of a flywheel and pull it round and get out of the way quick.
Fire it up. And then it banged and popped and clattered, and that was worth seeing.
That was 2-cylinder, I imagine.
2-cylinder,
yeah.
So it was 2 big cylinders banging away there. And they had a good lineup of tractors. I like Fordsons because I was brought up on Fordson tractors. And the man was there who I'd sold my own old Fordson to, and he was glad to see me, and we had a long chat about tractors naturally. They got some nice tractor exhibits there, but there were all sorts of things. There was more camel racing, more air displays, dog handling displays, sheep displays, more entertainment in the tent, the big top.
Yes.
There was a fairground, of course, just next, with lovely equipment, all nicely done. And there were good food stands all the way round. There was one which was doing food all day, and it had a sort of a tent alongside it where they were actually serving the food, but where they were cooking it, the cookers were built into a vehicle that looked like a railway locomotive.
Good Lord!
And it had the chap was on the footplate cooking the food. It
How
was really
fantastic!
Wonderful. And they were ever such nice people, and the food was great.
I think that's what you stressed most when telling me about this, the fact that everybody was so friendly.
Well, yes, there was that, absolutely true, the showman, everybody. And then, as I say, the heavens opened in the afternoon, and the ground started to get nasty. But we'd managed to get out of the car park without too much trouble. I shared the driving with another man. He drove 2 days, I drove the other 2 days. And then we went down on the Sunday. The Sunday morning the weather was quite good, and the ground had started to dry up from the night before. But what I must say is I think there were about 5 or 6 inches of topsoil, and then it was hard underneath.
Yes.
Because during the Sunday they had an aerial display of a very well-known aircraft called the Grace Spitfire. Spitfire that was owned by a lady called Carolyn Grace.
Right.
And she gave a quarter of an hour, it's about 10 minutes, quarter of an hour demonstration. They also had First World War triplanes flying and giving aerobatics.
Fantastic.
More camel racing on the Sunday.
Yeah, seems to be a lot of camel racing. I'm sorry I missed it, actually.
They had a session of camel racing on all days. And as the day went on, the ground started to dry up, the sun came out, and it was really, I thought it was going to be quite pleasant.
Yeah.
And it was pleasant. I went and had a bit more food at the locomotive.
Well, why not if it's good hot food?
I should have gone every single day. I took sandwiches. I really shouldn't have done.
Oh, you get a bit sick of sandwiches, don't you, in events like that?
They were sort of coming out of my ears a bit. Anyway, there were more vehicles, and I say the Hispano turned up on the Sunday, and that was my high spot because I haven't seen that car. I haven't seen one of those cars for about 40 years.
Right. And
that's really, Hispano is to those countries, France, Switzerland, Spain, a bit like Rolls Royces to this country.
Yes.
Except the Hispanos were more sporty.
Right.
And they've been designed by an engineer who designed aero engines in the First World War.
Yes.
and they were more technically advanced than Rolls, because Rolls-Royce eventually had to pay a license fee to use Hispano Suiza brakes.
Oh.
Because they had four-wheel servo brakes, whereas Rolls only had two-wheel
right,
brakes. So
course.
sometime in the 20s they licensed to use Hispano brakes.
Well.
And the day went on. I'm not as fit as I used to be, and I had my stick with me, and I walked round and saw one or two other things, and then the lady and gentleman that owned the place came to see us, and we had a long talk with them, and they were very nice and very friendly, and it was really a pleasant day. We got to about 3 o'clock, and I thought, oh lovely, I think we're going to be okay, and then the clouds started to build up.
Oh dear.
And about 3:30, a few spots of rain, and then the heavens opened. I thought, oh my gosh, we've got to get out of here. And then that field then turned into like a battlefield.
Yes.
The mud was, oh gosh, they got such a lot of work to sort that land out after all that. And there were vehicles, at the end of the day, there were vehicles getting stuck. I saw a showman's one of those showman's tractors, the showman's lorries.
Yes.
With a big bonnet on the front, a big scammer, pulling this living van, and that got stuck, and they put in a big American 6x6 gun haulage tractor unit on the front, and that got stuck.
Oh,
and then they had another thing on the front, pulling that.
Oh.
And while all that was going on, a big steam engine with a crane on the front was trying to come up, and that got stuck. And they had another traction engine by the gate, and they pulled it out using the winding rope.
Goodness
which is
me.
exactly what they'd have done years ago. So I actually sat there watching all this going on, and this was all after the show had finished. And of course the mud was terrible. And as I explained earlier, it all had to go into one road. One
more or less lane out of that place.
Then
yes.
the traffic jammed up entirely. I had to park my car in the public car park, and that took me nearly an hour to get out of the public car park. And then I needed to get onto the rally field to collect my things. And they said, you can't get on there, it's jammed solid.
Oh,
so
dear.
They sent me into the exhibitors car park, which was like a ploughed field.
Oh dear.
So anyway, I got halfway down the field and had to found a bit of grass to park on. And at the end of the day, I just had to leave the car there for an hour and go, and we had to sit down and wait for all this to sort it out.
Yes.
Because the gate was jammed by exhibitors trying to get out, and so we just had to wait for it to sort itself out. But eventually we got the marquees had to be taken down and packed away, and load the car up with all the bits, and came home after 3 very exciting days.
Well, it sounds like a wonderful few days, yes.
Well, it was fantastic, really. There was so much to see down there, and I did have a ride on the railway on the
Oh,
Sunday.
you did?
Yes, I did go down and have a ride. It was they got the steam engine on the front, and that was really good. They'd got like a guard's van and a freight truck.
Yes.
So I was in the freight truck, open top, and that was great.
Did you go far on the railway?
I think it runs probably about they start from the station and they go down the hill, and that has to be held back on the steam, of course. And then they go into another section of track, and then they back again, and then they come back up the hill.
Well.
But the thing is, though, when you're on the ride, each side of the track, there are all sorts of artifacts that have been rescued by the gentlemen from various railway stations, and things that are being scrapped.
Wonderful.
And there is a construction, well, in the field where the show was held, they called it the Iron Henge.
Oh yes.
Because we've got Stonehenge. Well, this was the Iron Henge, which was a collection of cast iron columns about 20 feet high, which had come out of some railway station that was either being modernised or scrapped, and they put it in a circle. So they had this circle of pillars, and that's where they kept the camels penned in there.
Oh.
Yeah. So I think at the end of the day, I think everybody had a a good time. And I have to say, it was probably one of the best shows I'd ever been to.
That's great. You do make it sound very exciting, especially the old camel racing. I think I'd have got my my pinks on and my top hat, and we'd have been away.
Okay, that would be a sight.
A sight worth seeing, yes, especially as I fell off.
Well, I don't. To be honest, I saw those girls on those camels, and they're not. You know, they look quite. Yeah, I know you've got used to getting motion, the movement of them, but they seem to be fairly secure on them.
Well, I wonder how they get on sort of riding on grass, whereas of course they're normally.
Well, they said
sand.
that they've got I mean, I'm not all that up with camel. They've got a web feet to stop them sinking into sand.
Right.
And they've got 3 eyelids.
Yes, indeed.
They've got an ordinary eyelid and one that comes over the eye to protect it from dust if there's a dust storm.
Of course.
So it's amazing. Everybody gave a talk and everybody was happy. Our chaps were happy in the model club tent because they had lots of people coming round. I had people stopping and asking about the gramophones, which makes it really.
It does. It's a pity you couldn't play a few of them, but
well,
as you said, there was a lot of noise.
The trouble is there was too much competition, really. Got the fairground on one side and the entertainment tent on the other.
Yes.
And when the bass speakers started, it sort of hit you in the stomach. I thought, oh, God.
Well, yes.
But having said that, it wasn't all pop entertainment.
No.
They had, on one day, they had a ukulele band. 80 people playing ukuleles.
I don't know quite how to describe that, viewers.
There were all sorts of entertainment. There were folk groups. There were more classical ones.
Oh, so it was a very wide range of entertainment.
Very wide range of entertainment indeed. And as I say, on all of the days there were events going on in the arena. The food was being served all day, and the railway was running for 3 days. And we had really
it sounds like something for everybody.
Well, there was, and I can't believe that anybody went out of their board in any way, shape, or form.
No.
Because to get something like 80 steam engines, there's only one place I can think of where you get that many, and that would be down at Stowpane.
Oh yes.
That big rally, the Great Dorset Steam Pad.
Oh yes, that's still going, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
I think that's a week long, isn't it?
Yes,
it used to be.
Yes, I know people who go and camp down there for a week to see all that because that is amazing sight.
I know people who went there. Whether they still do, I don't know. They took about 7 or 8 vehicles because there's a big sort of auto jumble down there as well as everything else.
There were a few second-hand stands on this one. I didn't find it. I found 1 or 2 things to say sort of no thank you to. There were a couple of radios which I did think about, but I didn't buy. There weren't any records, but I'm always on the look for anything interesting.
We ought to think about doing it next time and taking a stall of 78s. I've got plenty of spare ones.
Well, I don't know. Because we were told that this was going to be the last one, but I do hear rumours that they've been sponsored to do another one.
Oh, great!
Because this particular one was though it was a public show, it wasn't a commercial rally in the sense it was this gentleman's 80th birthday.
Yes,
party.
indeed.
It was his birthday over the weekend. And one of the things we did, and they were happy to accept, which I was very pleased about, we made them both honorary members of the Witney Model Club.
Well, that's wonderful.
And they were quite happy with that and pleased.
Oh well, that's great.
Spent a lot of time talking to us in the marquee, and that was really brilliant.
They're very nice people. I
thought it was fantastic, and they will all join in the fun. You see.
Well, this is part of it's for their entertainment as much as anything else.
Well,
they want people to be happy.
The story, the rally, the show before, which was 2 years ago, it was the lady's 70th birthday, and apparently on the Saturday an aircraft flew over and this person jumped out with a parachute.
Right.
And she did a parachute jump. 70 did a parachute jump.
Astonishing.
On her birthday. And I saw her riding on a tank. They had a full-size military tank. And I'll tell you something else. They tried to pull a vehicle out with the tank, and the tank actually got stuck.
The tank got stuck. That's brilliant.
Yes.
I've never heard of such a thing.
No, the tank got stuck.
I suppose they do, you know, but I've not heard of it.
I mean, the ground wasn't. If that had been soft ground, everybody would have been up to the axles, and there would have been a devil problem to get them out.
Didn't you say that Austin 7?
Yes, and the funny thing was that Austin 7 I mentioned earlier on, it was a light, sporty type. It may have been a special of some sort. I don't think it was a production one.
One of the fabric body ones, perhaps?
No, it was more. It was an open top, sporty type.
Right.
I think it may have been a special. But anyway, this chap went all through that mud as if it wasn't there. He just came up there, sort of waved to everybody. He was going. All this other stuff was getting stuck. It only got narrow wheels about.
Well, yeah, they're only very small.
You know, not as big as some modern motorbike tyres.
No, indeed.
Went flying straight up there. It was amazing to watch.
Well, I suppose because it's light and it could go straight over the top of it.
Absolutely, yes.
I don't know quite how the dynamics of it work. You know, someone we used to know who's no longer with us had an Austin 7. I went for a ride in it and said I'd never go and ride in such a thing again. It was far too frightening.
Well, they were only obviously very basic cars.
They were.
But a bit like the Mini, they were cars that people could do an awful lot with.
Well, this is it. I could have driven that car from the back seats with my... And so could you.
Oh, very much so.
But the thing is, I would never go in one again because it's only thin pieces of 2-ply and some tin between me and everything else on the road. If you were hit by anything other than a bicycle, you're dead. Basically, but amazing that it got went across the mud there. Amazing.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, there were. I know the company produced certain sporting ones.
Yes.
They did an Austin 7 Nippy about 1931.
Ah, yes, and of course there were various people who produced sort of racing ones, didn't they?
And I could have, funnily enough, back in the 1960s, I could have bought one of those Austin 7 Nippies if I'd have known the man was selling it for £15.
Good Lord.
And that was an open, sporty version. Nice one.
My father had an Austin 7. I think it was his first car sometime in the later 50s, and it was in 1935. So you imagine driving a car that was over 20 years old. Amazing.
But then you see at that time, those sort of vintage cars, those sort of 1930s cars, had still been in use. And they would just sell them cheaply.
Yeah.
And somebody like a student or somebody like that would have bought them and ran them and gone out for a bit of fun, really.
Well, absolutely.
I mean, they're easy enough to fix if they go wrong. And if the engine won't start, you've only got one or two basic things to do to get it running.
Exactly.
Again.
Well, I suppose well into the 50s and 60s, there was sort of hierarchy where students had Austin 7s and other small cars, and sort of army officers competed to buy 3-litre Bentleys and things like that.
Because I remember Oxford, you see quite a lot of vintage old cars running around Oxford in the 60s.
Right.
There were the very, old Rolls and cars like that running. Probably come from North Oxford, somewhere up there.
Yes. One still lives up there at the Preceptory, as we know.
Yeah, yes, right.
But, I suppose a lot of these old cars were wiped out by the MOT when that came in.
That did a lot of problems. Yeah, they did, of course.
Took a lot of people off the road, I should imagine.
Yes, yeah. Well, of course, the thing was, before then, anything if anything was going to fall off, you just tied it up. I talked to a man who had a Morris Minor.
Yeah.
And he said that he was out one night and the suspension went, or something went with the suspension. And he had some rope in the back and tied it up with rope.
Yeah.
And got the car home with that.
And of course farmers, as you will know, are notorious for sort of having 3-wheel tractors and everything held up with baler twine, including their trousers. I'm not saying you have, but now.
It wasn't unusual in those days, I'll tell you. Yes.
Oh dear.
Oh, well, I remember it was in the summer, we were turning hay one year, and the father was using this side delivery rake, you called it, would turn the hay and turn round, and about 4 of the wheel spokes had cracked.
Oh.
And so then that was a question of getting bits of wood, and we tied it up with string. We ran that machine for about another 2 or 3 years after that, before the wheel finally collapsed altogether. See, the trouble was, it was a job to do anything with, because the wheels were cast.
Yes.
They were steel, you could have welded them, but cast, it just very difficult to do.
Yes, indeed. You were telling me a wonderful anecdote, which we must include in these stories, about your father having deliveries made to the farm.
Oh yes.
Yeah, the baler twine being delivered to the farm.
Oh yes. Yeah. Well, there were. The thing was, we had 2 kinds of machine we had to get string for. One was the binder.
Mm.
If we were using the binder, that was binder twine. That was quite thin string actually, and it was in sort of bundles about 10 inches in diameter and about perhaps 10 inches high, circular, like a ball of string. And then when the balers came out, the hay balers, then they had string as well, which was more heavy duty. And we had to get the string, and in those days the Oxford Bus Company used to run a parcel service, and so there was a firm in Oxford in Park End Street called Curtis and Horn, and Father used to ring them up and ask them to put some baler twine on the bus. And so he used to go down to Witney to the bus office to get the baler twine.
Wonderful.
And other things as well, you know, if there were other parts he wanted, or wanted some tines for the side delivery rake, or something else busted on the baler, or something like that. Because in those days they had these old-fashioned businesses, and you could get anything.
Yeah, exactly. They would, you know, if you've got an old bit of machinery, someone had the spare for it.
Well, there were a couple of firms in Witney. There was Henry Long and Son, and they were agricultural engineers, and there were Lees. They were agricultural engineers, and if you just went into the shop and with a rusty old bolt that had broken, I said, if you've got one of these, they go out to the back and find one.
Yeah, exactly.
You wouldn't go and buy a packet of 10 bolts. You'd buy one, you know. That would do the job.
And that's it. You don't want something near the job. They'd have the right thing.
Absolutely, yes, indeed.
There's an ironmonger's where I used to live, which is still going. Been going since I think 1742, where they still stocked a lot of oil lamp parts, which are very useful to get oil lamp chimneys. Yeah. I can't say actually I've used one in a long time. I haven't had a power cut like that for years.
Well,
but
if you look out there, you will see a couple out there.
Oh yes, I won't turn round. But, oh yes, you've got your oil lamps primed, haven't you?
Oh yes.
Always ready is the farmer's motto.
Oh yes, I've got a few. I can see a box of chimneys, and I can see a mantle or two up there. Oh yes, I've got a few oil lamps.
I wonder how many people would know how to fit a gas mantle nowadays. I remember it being seeing it as a child at my grandparents when they had gas lamps.
Yeah.
And having, you know, the mantle shrink onto the.
Had to set fire to it.
You had to set fire to it, and it would
right.
shrink into shape.
Well, if you look at that table,
yes,
you'll see on that table there's a little black mark about 1 inch in diameter.
Ah, yes.
And that was caused, I was told, because that table was standing under a gas lamp, and the whole mantle dropped out and landed on the table and burnt a hole in the table.
Amazing.
Or made a ring on the table, which we've never been able to take out.
Well, no, indeed, because it'd be jolly hot. They get white hot, don't they? Those mantles.
So. Yes, indeed.
Dear, oh dear, oh dear. So you had a jolly good weekend.
Yes, indeed. Yes, yes, I wouldn't miss that one. Got a few more shows coming up this year. Some with a model club, and some I shall visit on a private basis. Got a rally coming up at Banbury at the end of June, Banbury Blocks, and I'll probably go to that one, have a look around.
Great stuff. Wow.
Were there any questions or anything that?
I think I've left the list at home. That's not very bright, is it, viewers?
Any comments or anything?
Yeah, people are always enjoying the videos.
Well, I'm very pleased about that. I'm grateful to people.
Well, hopefully next time I come over, we can do a bit of a tour of some more of your machines.
Well, yes, I've had some more in since I saw you last.
Yeah.
So yes, we'll have another wander around and see.
Oh, that'll be great.
Because the place needs a whacking great tidy up at the moment.
Well,
but I'm not as fit as I used to be, so it's a bit of a job to do.
Well, I find most of it's motivation.
Well, yes, I agree with that, but with me, it's a bit. It's getting activity.
And at the preceptory, it doesn't help that I never seem to stop buying large collections of records and lots of interesting machines, which stops them getting into the hands of certain people and auctions.
The point is, it's always good fun.
It is.
With a collection, you've got to try and keep upgrading if you can. If you see something a bit better than...
Well, it's not only that. I meet other collectors like yourself, and Rob, we'll mention him, where, he has introduced me to ballads and things like that, that I would not previously have bothered with.
No, indeed
But
not.
some of these ballads, in Old Madrid was one song, wonderful song, I'd never heard of it before. Another was, what's it called? The Bedouin Love Song by Pinsuti
Pinsuti,
and Sweet.
yes, that's right.
Sweet.
Yeah, that's right.
But he wrote My Old Shaco as well.
Yes, that's right. He did.
Which I didn't realise. Oh no, sorry, that was Trotteray. Wrote
Right.
My Old Shaco, which
right. Yes,
he also wrote in Old Madrid.
Yes.
But it's extraordinary. These are, because I was discussing this with a collector only yesterday, and he was saying, well, you know, pop songs of the Victorian era were music hall songs, and I said, I don't believe that's correct.
No,
I think the ballad was the pop song.
The two were rather different.
Mm.
You see, the point is the people that had the ballads would probably have never gone to the music hall.
No, indeed, they were respectable middle class
it's a
people.
Different world.
Mm.
With the ballads, you see, to sing ballads properly, you had to be quite a trained singer.
Yes,
Because
indeed.
some of those songs would take a lot of singing to make them sound good.
Well, that's what Rob and I were discussing when I last spoke to him, because they need a lot of enunciation and
Absolutely.
proper diction.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, I think I traced it to Gilbert and Sullivan singing, where you had to project the words to the back of the theatre. But of course, it's probably an older tradition deriving from the ballad song.
Well, yes, that's right. Absolutely,
as you
yes,
say.
That's right. Well, you see, the music hall singers, they had to make themselves, because the old music halls were attached to pubs.
Yes.
And people were eating and drinking and clanking glasses and talking, and they had entertainment. They had to make themselves heard over all that.
Over all that in the front to get to people in the galleries and the back.
And there was none of this business of amplification in those days.
No.
They either made themselves heard or they weren't any good.
They were chucked off the stage.
Exactly, yes, that's
but
right.
You were brought up with an awful lot of ballad records and things.
Yes, it's the sort of thing my grandfather would have liked. See, my grandfather was born in the 1880s.
Mm.
And he was sort of a young man, sort of late Victorian, Edwardian times, and he would have liked the musical comedies of the time, the Country Girl, the Geisha, people, things like that.
Mm.
And then he liked some of the ballads, like, well, the Blind Ploughman, for example. What else did he have? I Travel the Road, Sanctuary of the Heart by Catelby, probably the Lost Chord and Holy City, things like that.
Jolly Brothers Waltz.
Yes, exactly, absolutely. That was yes, and Strauss music, and that was what they went to. They weren't into jazz by a long way. I mean, that sort of 1920s, 20s trendies went in for that sort of thing.
Well, I think the 1920s recording, and people will no doubt contradict me and produce other examples, but I think The Girlfriend takes a lot of beating for a top 20s musical.
Absolutely, no, that was, yes.
Some of the tunes from that, The Blue Room, and
yes, absolutely, yes.
that sort of thing, absolutely extraordinary stuff.
But there was it was what the 20s was one of those periods when there was an explosion of excitement.
Mm.
And the music was exciting as well. It was the Charleston era.
Yes.
The jazz and blues and all coming. It was just that time. The only time it was a bit similar to the 1960s.
Oh, I suppose so, yeah.
Like, I can liken it to the 60s to a certain extent, because we had the Second World War made things drab. The 50s were fairly quiet. I mean, it was mostly a lot of ballad singers in the 50s, apart from the Americans with Bill Haley and Buddy Holly.
Well, yeah, they wiped out all those sort of Rosemary Clooney novelty songs.
Absolutely.
When Bill Haley came along, that stuff was shoved aside.
Absolutely.
Just as when the Beatles came along, the skiffle and the jazz and the Bill Haleys were shoved aside in their turn.
Well, the skiffle groups were fun. That was really when there wasn't much money about, and get a group of people playing and singing and making some music. And as I say, when the Beatles came, well, that was like being hit by a whacking great explosion, and the whole world changed. And it's really carried on in a similar ilk since. It haven't had the sort of, well, so if there's a slightly flattening effect of the 1950s, it's kept going with one style after another ever since, really.
Yeah, you ended up with all sorts of things. In fact, a friend of mine used to say that, you know, the incredible excitement of a new Beatles album, he said he'd never experienced anything like it since. But of course we know of something like it since, don't we? When a certain programme or new series comes out, which I'm featuring in the picture now.
Exactly.
We do enjoy those ones, don't we?
Yeah. Well, I think, to be honest, if people are in any doubt about the 1960s, they want to see the Beatles film Hard Day's Night.
Oh yes.
I mean, that to me sums up that period of the 60s.
Yeah.
And there's another one called The Boat That Rocked about pirate radio. That's another
yes.
one which is great. They're great films. And if you see The Boat That Rocked, do watch the special features, because the special features are as good as the film itself.
Right.
Because the man who made it said that they'd gone greatly over time and they just had to cut huge chunks out of it.
Well, yes, yes.
And I remember the pirate radios. I mean, pirate radio stations, Radio Caroline and things like that.
Yes.
Revolutionised radio broadcasting.
I was listening to a wonderful documentary on Radio 4 Extra the other day about Captain Plug, who founded Radio Normandy.
Oh yes.
And he took his, I think, a Rolls Royce with a huge diagonal aerial on the top, and he and these 5 school teachers, why on earth they were with him, I don't know. It wasn't explained. And they were in the Carpathian Mountains, and they picked up, I think it may have been 2LO, but one of the early stations, and they were listening to sort of instrumental dinner music in the middle of the road in the Carpathian Mountains. But I thought that must be rather like having the pirate radio ships playing up-to-date modern music and not the BBC's sanitised stuff.
Well, of course, you see, the point was that BBC in the 1950s was still very pre-war. It didn't really change. As they say on these sort of run into the film, they only played about 45 minutes of popular music every day or something like that.
Yes.
Well, of course, the youngsters wanted to hear all the latest, and they weren't getting it. Of course, soon as the pirates started, 24 hours a day and all the very latest hits, they weren't easy to receive, the pirate radio stations, because they're always at what I call the low end of medium wave. They were around about 203 metres, somewhere down there, and that's not easy. Was always trouble with fading. But I used to find that the old-fashioned valve radios used to pick it up better than the transistor.
Right. That sounds quite hilarious. But of course, in the days when you were building your own equipment, that's all you had was very old 30s radios and things.
To get hold of in those days, because the new stuff, I mean, the hi-fi was unknown to the majority of people in those days.
Just too expensive.
Too expensive. Yeah. They had to sort of do something about it eventually, and in the middle to late 60s. It got a bit cheaper, but one time it was professional people that had hi-fi as such. But
to hear sort of popular music coming out of 30 speakers must have been quite amusing.
Oh yes, absolutely, yes, very much.
But if that's all you'd got, that's all you could work with.
Well, that's absolutely right, yes indeed.
Perhaps you'd care to tell viewers what we're pointing the camera at today. Your Game of Throne.
Oh, I know, the wooden throne, yes. I found that in a local antique place.
Yes.
It's got to be restored sometime. I thought it looked quite amusing.
It is very amusing. When I hold court at the Preceptory, we will have it there. I, of course, viewers, have a large golden throne with a large G above it. For gramophones, of course. And but I thought that might be nice to feature in our programme. Well, thank you very much for a most entertaining talk. Glad you had a good weekend. It sounds fascinating.
It certainly was.
And you say you'll be going next time, so if there is a next time,
yes, indeed.
That'll be great. Well, thank you very much indeed for watching, viewers. Thank you, Squire, for a wonderfully entertaining talk, and hopefully we'll all meet up soon for another video.
Take care.
Thank you, viewers, wherever you may be.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.